It seemed very arrogant in the sense that, we had this record label that was like paying for our recordings and trying to actually like market our music, right? So it can be sold to people and appreciate it. And we're kind of just like, nah, fuck that, man. Like, we're going to play this song that we wrote yesterday that no one's ever heard, and we're not going to play the song that everybody wants to hear, And it wasn't so like, it wasn't so negative in that sense, but it was also very uncompromising. And it also transferred over into other things too. Like if we were kind of like feeling shitty that day, we would sort of play a dud show. Like we wouldn't like, like strap in and kind of like make it work, Like we would change the set list mid set, or like we would stop songs sometimes. Like like every one time we were playing, like I don't even know where we were, but like we were playing that song Solemn. It was on Sadness. And we were somewhere in the Midwest, and and dude, it just sounded like two cats rolling down the stairs in a trash can together. Like I could not make out a single like note that was coming out. Right?
Of the monitors?
Yeah, like it just whatever it was, like acoustically in that room, like it just sounded like total white noise. And I remember Jeremy just being like, "Wait. Hold on, man. Hold the fuck on. Wait." And like we're stopping the song, and this is like a legitimate show. There's like 700 people there or something. Jeez. And we're standing there like, okay, like what's happening? And Jeremy's like, I can't fucking hear a goddamn thing. Like, and then we sort of like,
fuck it, play Talking's cheap. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Exactly. Like, but like the arrogance to think that like because it doesn't sound good to you while you're on stage, that you get to just stop the song. Like, I think that was a very funny. I don't know. We had a little bit of an illness in that way, that it never became like a career in that sense. Like we always sort of like we're like, nah, man. Like we're artists. Like we're gonna be true to ourselves always. And
sure.
And it's funny because that's like a very much like an ethos of punk rock, and like or like being a visual artist or something else like that is like this kind of like in theory, right? It is like I'm gonna be very uncompromising about what I do. But I think really like there should be some kind of like relationship between what people are kind of expecting from you and what you deliver to them,
Yeah, I mean, well, I just think it plays out, right? Like you make that decision, and then if you don't deliver, they have the choice to like see you again or not.
Yeah, they can drop off, and then everything works itself out eventually, right? Like you stop selling records, or
yeah, but you guys were killing it at the beginning, right? Of doing Sadness and being on tour for that. How many tours did you do off that record?
Well, we did the Good Riddance tour before Sadness came out. And then, if I'm getting my timing right, we did a headlining tour after that. Like a legit one. I think it was like 4 or 6 weeks or something like that.
How many kids are you drawing on a headlining tour?
It was pretty dinky. I think, on average, there was probably like 20 to 50 people at every show. Had a couple little good ones where maybe there were some more notable bands that we kind of hooked up with here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I'll tell you, those small shows, sometimes they're really surprising. Like you probably experienced this, like playing In Control. It's like
because all our shows were small, so
yeah, like
except for choose from the small shows.
Right, exactly. You're like, wow, how are we playing in front of 20 people right now? But it feels like nuts in here. And there was a lot of that, and the kind of the enthusiasm that like you would get from people at those small shows it's on a different level, because like you could tell when you're talking to them after the show that they're like legitimately stoked. And so even though the turnouts were really small, like we could tell that we were like hooking into something that felt really good.
That's cool, because like there's nothing that feels worse than like the apathy at a small show.
Yeah.
When you play like a bowling alley in like somewhere in Western New York to like 20 people, and you can just tell them no one gives a fuck.
I know. And the small shows are also interesting because you're not getting like paired up with bands that you like are of a similar sound or a similar scene necessarily. Like, like what we played in like Lubbock, Lubbock, Texas with that band Speedwagon. You remember that band?
Nope.
They were called REO Speedwagon at the time and they got sued.
Oh,
so they had to change their name to Speedwagon.
REO Speedwagon, huh?
Yeah, but they were just like dudes with like handlebar mustaches and no shirts on and long hair, and they were just kind of like, just kind of like crank rock or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, but you're like hanging out with these guys and drinking beers with them after the show, and the crowd is just like obviously not there because they're like super hooked up into some niche. They're just like, let's go see some heavy music. Yeah, and so I mean that's always like a really interesting positive outcome of those early tours is like you're just playing with anyone and everyone, and there's some guy like like a what do they call the ICP dudes, juggalos? Yeah, they'll be like juggalos in the pit, like
it's always like juggalos.
Yeah, you're playing.
The juggalos hold it down though, like for. I don't know. I've always respected that, right? Like those guys, they built like a whole scene.
Absolutely,
right? And it's like it's pretty positive. Like I think I don't know. I mean, there's probably some shitty side to it, but I don't know about it, so I don't give a fuck. But like, it seems like pretty positive. Like it's about friendship and unity and building each other up, even though like everyone's like a bunch of freaks, right? Like. I don't know. You always going to have a juggalo show in the middle of the country.
Well, I don't know. If you think about it, really, like, it might not be unlike being into hardcore in the early 80s.
No, I'm sure it's very similar, right? You're like an outcast.
Yeah.
And it's like palatable for them.
Yeah, and to people outside of what you're doing, it seems kind of subhuman or trashy, But they're hooked into something that makes them feel, I don't know, like a part of something. And that's better than like, I don't know, like joining a neo-Nazi group or something.
Well, I think that's the most positive thing about it is like, even though a lot of that hip-hop is like terrible, like you got a lot of these people that could have like gone really the wrong way on the racist tip and they're like into rap.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's keeping their mind open like that, right? Like, at least they're not a bunch of fucking shitty racists.
Exactly, and obviously they're not hating on us because they're not bummed when we're playing, and they're
like,
there.
Fucking rock and roll, let's do it.
Right.
So what other bands did you tour with?
Sadness, the first two records, Sadness and Diagram for Healing, were produced by Trevor Keith. He sang in Face to Face. And so, which also happens to be the first show I ever went to. So that was actually a really cool tie-in for me.
Did you ever tell him that?
I must have. He was actually living on Strand at the time.
Huh.
That band's from Victorville originally. And that was actually another reason, because the owner of Vagrant Records, Rich Egan, was Face to Face's manager. And their roadie or merch guy or something, he lived next door to me when I lived on Melrose Street on Strand.
Huh.
And so their guitar player Chad was like kind of posted up with him for a while, and I would bug him all the time, and like give him demos and stuff like that. And so I think Pat kind of like hitting Vagrant with No Motiv stuff, but then also me bugging Chad, kind of like they were like, who's this band that like these guys that we're really tight with, like these guys keep coming back into like our field of view somehow, And so I think a little bit of that had something to do with like why we were able to like win those guys over and get signed to that label. But Trevor was taking a stab at producing, and so Rich hooked us up with him, and he produced Sadness, and then they put us on a face-to-face tour after our first headlining tour. It was really fun to be able to tell them that was the first show I'd ever gone to. So like we always just kind of sort of felt a kinship with those guys. But like it was really interesting going from touring with Good Riddance to touring with Face to Face, because they were very much more like Good Riddance did not give us a good idea of like what touring with other bands is like, like they didn't need all their own space, and like we were like with them the whole time. Whereas with Face to Face, it was like they were very much like career musicians, like they were on a bus, and God, if I recall, that it was when they put out "Ignorance Is Bliss" too, which was a really good record. But their fans fucking went like ape shit about how much they hated that record because like it was basically an art record, you know, compared to any other face-to-face record. So I think maybe they were sort of like hunkering down the bus a lot too, and so it was interesting having recorded with them. And sort of knowing them, cause like I didn't say this earlier, but Trevor ended up moving to Strand because Chad was like, "Hey, I live in this spot. It's really cool." And then Trevor ended up living there too. But they very much were like way more sort of sectioned off and just a little less like in the mix with us, you know. So we didn't really get to like connect with them super. Like on a super, like I felt much more like close with Trevor when we would record with them than we did when we tour with them. They were kind of on their own program, touring. But the shows were incredible, you know, like 1,500 people, 2,000 people every single night. And actually, probably the best show we ever played was in North Carolina, and it was because Trevor got sick and they had to cancel the show. And so they just moved us to this like venue that like held like 150 people like down the street, and just whoever the stragglers were from the face-to-face show, they like came and watched us play instead. And we went through our entire catalog. I mean, like these guys would not let us get off the stage, and it was fucking nuts the entire time. Like just like piles of people. Like it was like this like churning like dust cloud of people the entire time we were playing. And like,
did you play Friends for them?
Yeah, we fucking played. I swear to God, we played every song we could think of. Like there was nothing left. It was incredible, and we actually. There were fans from that show that would like fly out to see us play when we would tour after that.
Because you just made them believers.
Yeah, like it was, you know, it's one of those shows where like when you recall it in your memory, like the faces of people in the crowd were like zombified. Like they were, I mean, not zombified. They were like animals, you know?
Yeah, like Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah, it was intense in the best way. Like it was a fun time had like all around, really.
That's cool. So you come off that and then you go right back in to Diagram, huh?
Yeah, I don't know if there was another tour or not between.
But Diagram comes out in 2001.
Yeah,
it's 3 years after Sadness and 3 years after the Stand Your Ground demo.
That's right. I wish I could tell you more about Stand Your Ground, but I was kind of like a...
You were kind of in and out, right? Because I think I ended up taking your place on bass. You and Corey left the band. I don't remember who left first.
I think I left first because I actually recall really well that Corey was like solidly in the band still.
Okay, and then like we went and we did the 7-inch as like a 4-piece.
That's right. I think maybe it was on the demo, but I feel like the picture on the 7-inch is me playing bass, but you were the bass player.
Nah, so that's like some Euro. It's like some Euro dude put out the demo on a 7-inch.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, and it's you playing on that. So
yeah,
that's cool.
Just like little shell tops, like jumping in the air.
Yeah, I think I don't know what it was. Like 100 got pressed or some shit. Because that same dude did the second Voice of Defiance 7-inch, and like there's only 100 pressed or something. And that's kind of a bummer because I love that record. It's better than the first one, you know, but it never like got out there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but back to you, dude.
Enough about you, Joe.
That's right. So how do you feel about Diagram for Healing? Like, were you concerned about there being like a sophomore slump?
Not really at the time. That record, what was happening at that time? We were definitely getting poppy. You know, we were getting more poppy. Like Sadness had a bit of a melancholy kind of thing going on, and I don't know if it was like influenced from some of the bands we were playing with because Pat was really like he was going really deep in like pop punk too at that time. Like I was getting into heavier, harder music, and Pat was like halfway kind of like on a mission to like actually find like legitimate commercial success like as a band, and he was really liking like really poppy stuff like Blink-182 and MXPX and band, and we had toured with MXPX. That might have actually been for Diagram, now that I think about it. But he just liked that 3-chord pop stuff a lot. And that kind of found its way into a lot of the music. Pat had a lot of influence in the writing in that era, like Sadness and Diagram. I think he probably wrote like at least some portion of like most of the songs. So that record, I don't know, it felt. This is kind of like the phase, like I wouldn't call it a sophomore slump, but it's the phase with every band where you're sort of at this point you're starting to kind of go through the motions a little bit, like you've already sort of like done all the things that are new to you, like recording a real record and touring and doing these things, and so it becomes more of like not like an obligation, but it definitely becomes more of like this is a thing that we have to like figure out, and it actually took like. Our writing process kind of, I think touring, we weren't super industrious guys, like, and so we weren't able to like write while we were on tour, and because we were touring so much supporting Sadness, it was hard for us to write that record and get everything done in time. So
yeah, it's a 3-year gap.
Yeah. There's a couple bangers on that album, but I think the sequencing of it's a little interesting because you could tell that we were sort of like front loading it with the stuff that we thought was the most catchy, but they weren't necessarily the best, like the best songs on the record in terms of like composition or like this the quality of the song, like whether it be lyrically or like how the song is sort of like put together. But the first few songs were like catchy, and that actually went over really well, like with the people that we were playing in front of. Like, it's funny because I think Sadness, for people that know us, was sort of like the important record that we did. But nationally, and maybe even internationally, I'd probably say that Diagram is the one that we're like actually known for the most.
That's interesting. I think doing a second record is just always interesting in a band, right? Because even though you've done a lot of stuff before, Sadness Prevails was like, you kind of cleaned the slate, and that was like kind of a first record again. Mm-hmm. And it's always weird doing the second record because you're writing songs that you're never going to play.
Yeah.
So it's like you're writing these songs to like fill out a record, and you're never going to play them live. Like, you're not really like accountable to them. So I think that's why some bands, like their second record can just be garbage.
Maybe. I don't think we were that jaded yet.
I'm not saying I'm not knocking your record at all. I'm saying that sometimes the second records are not the best.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm not saying your album is garbage.
Well, I just meant what I meant by that is that I still like was in that state of mind that like every song we wrote on that record, when we wrote it, felt like a total banger,
Yeah.
It wasn't until like later that I started like critiquing some of that stuff. And me personally, I don't think that's like my favorite No Motiv record, but it definitely is the poppiest and the catchiest one. And
it's a good record. You guys never like shit the bed, but I do think that you're pretty spot on with like the sequencing is interesting on it.
Yeah. There's some songs that are like, whenever I'm in the moment, I have a hard time recalling song names and things like that. But there's some songs on the back end of that record that, and I feel the same way about Sadness. Like if Sadness came out on vinyl, Diagram I don't think it did, but side B,
LPs did.
Yeah. Oh no, Sadness came out on vinyl though.
Sadness came out on vinyl like I think 1,000 copies.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
But side B of like any of those records, I feel like is actually like, for me, it's like the best like representation of like where our heads were at.
Would you write for that? Would you like in your head? Would you be writing like the CD? Like when you're sequencing, mm-hmm. You're obviously like sequencing your songs to be a certain way. But are you also thinking about side A and side B?
Yeah. Like when we would sequence albums, there was kind of like a list of priorities. Like not like we had it like down to a science or anything, but we definitely did. The first 3 songs, it was kind of like, okay, we need to like during this time, a lot of bands were doing this thing, right? Where they were like, the third track is like the single, right? Whether you're actually going to like put a single out on the radio or not, like
well, it's Disconnected.
Right.
Disconnected goes third, dude.
Yeah, like you put Disconnected third. Like that's and the first song is like a high energy song, right? Like you come out with the first song, it's high energy song. Second song is kind of high energy, but sort of like maybe takes the tempo down a bit.
Yeah, you're lubing up for Disconnected.
Exactly, and then the third song is like the hit, and then everything thereafter is just like how do these songs kind of like what's the roller coaster? How do these songs kind of like bleed into each other, right? Sure. And it's funny because I think that objective sequencing in the front end of records was actually really detrimental to like a lot of records and a lot of bands in that era because they were just like, well, we got to put the fucking hit third, we got to do this thing, and then you actually sort of like do like what you naturally sort of feel after that, which is like, oh, I like the way this song kind of like bleeds into this song, and it kind of takes you on a journey a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I think that's so interesting, the sequencing, because like I would do that. I would always be really conscious like what song was starting side B, and part of that is because like there's a lot of records that I got like way into like when I started listening to side B. You know, like I love the whole like Raw Power LP, but like when I like started listening to side B more than side A, I was like, holy fuck, like this is the most insane music I ever heard in my life.
Right. You
know what I mean? Or like I think the Descendants, the first record, like the side B is like way better than side A. Like it's got all the bangers, you know? And also that LP compilation of like all the early Dillinger 4 stuff. Like that was another one where it's like just side B was like so sick, and I don't know. I was, you're in high school playing video games and shit. It's like, I don't want to keep flipping the record. Like, I just want to, like, listen to a side over and over and over, And it's, like, sick. Another one is side... Well, I guess that's a side A, but side A of Joshua Tree. Good job.
Oh, yeah.
God, like, talk about front-loading the record.
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah, have you ever... You're a little more engaged than I am in general, so you probably never done this, but... There's definitely been records that I accidentally put on side B first, and I was like, "Fuck, this record is sick." And then and then you realize what you did, and it's kind of confusing for a little bit. And then I have to like listen, like even like going back in like digitally and listening to music, I'll like start like where side B would start.
Yeah, can you even unwind that?
It's really hard. It's like it's weird the way things. You don't realize how things imprint on you until you do something like that by accident. And then you're like, oh, like, I'm stuck with this now. Like, this is how I have to experience this.
Yeah, I don't have anything, like, as extreme as that, but there are a lot of records that, like, I hate the first song, and, like, I've basically never listened to that song. Like, that Face-to-Face record is a good one. Like, I hate that first, like, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, that song's garbage, and that record would have been so perfect if it would have started out with song 2. Like, just with, like, that guitar by itself, because that's, like...
Oh, yeah.
It's such
kind of sad, like, kind of melancholy feel.
It's like, you basically sum up, like, the entire face-by-face, or face-to-face sound, like, in just the guitar playing by itself.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, but you had to, like, chuck this garbage song up front because you wanted to show your high energy.
Exactly. Prime example of that objective sequencing. You know, I wonder, though, is, like, if you just took out the 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4... off of that, would that song be like more like, I don't know, would you have an easier time wrapping your head around that one, you think?
You can't do it, dude. You can't pull it off.
Yeah.
It's a part of it, man. I don't know, like, I don't know. I guess it's not like Face-to-Face needs my fucking help. So, like...
Well, also, like, you have the option to do that now. I mean, I don't know if you want me to tell people this story, but one thing I do know about you is that you edited out all the scenes from The Wrestler of his daughter because it's the only shitty part of that movie. And so you actually went through the trouble of taking all those scenes out of the movie so you could watch that movie in peace,
Yeah.
So, like, if you just need to simply edit out one song off the Face-to-Face record, I think you're, like, definitely capable of doing that.
Yeah, well, the inspiration for that. You're right. I did edit out every scene with the daughter on the movie The Wrestler, and now it is the perfect movie. But the inspiration for that is a mutual best friend of ours, Ryan Fredette, the singer of In Control. He used to so ignorantly hate guitar solos. at the same time, like being the biggest Slayer fan on earth
and Iron Maiden fan.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But the Maiden solos are a little better than the Slayer solos.
Well,
Slayer
like
solos
really quickly, like this is kind of like where all of us establish the difference between a solo and a lead.
That's true.
Right? Like, that was a big thing with, like, our group of friends is, like, don't start fucking wanking all over this stuff. But if you want to play, like, a nice, clean, simple guitar lead that's, like, almost like the vocal melody that's just being played by a different instrument, we're cool with that.
That's right.
And Maiden does that really well, right?
Yeah.
Like, even their, like, super technical solos, they have that kind of a lead vibe to it, not just, like, some dude that's just, like, wanking all over the place.
No, it's fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
It's fucking beautiful. Adrian Smith don't play. But, yeah, Ryan, like, he went in, and the double live record, The Decade of Aggression, he, on his double cassette boombox, he went in and fucking edited out every single guitar solo on the double record, and then like he would listen to the tape all the time, and like if you're a non-psycho, and you like it's like totally distracting because it's not perfect.
Not to mention on a boombox you hear like the record like whatever when you're smashing the buttons down, and it's like making these hard edits everywhere.
I know, it's like, man, that's really offensive sounding to just take out like a 15-second solo, you know?
You know what's incredible about that is like how did he find time to do that? Because he was...
You know it was just one night.
Yeah,
like,
he just went all like...
Just went fucking psycho one night, like, oh, I fucking hate solos. And
I can't take this anymore.
I can't do it. You know, and like, and that record is the shit, because like, it's got all like the best old stuff, and it's like right up to Seasons in the Abyss, so it's like, I mean, that's one of the greatest fucking live records ever.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was the first Slayer record I heard, and... Man, like that was so impactful, for me, like to hear that, and I don't know, like because it's such a good sounding live record too. Yeah, like you're looking for that on all other records after that, like the kind of ambience that music has, you know, like from the sound, the actual sound of them playing it live. So that one's pretty special.
You have a banter too, right? How y'all doing tonight?
Yeah,
so I remember when I was in 8th grade, I had this terrible band called Purveyors of Pestilence, and I was like trying to like emulate that because Tom Araya sounds so fucking rad, and he's like, "How y'all doing tonight?" And everyone's like, "Yeah." And I think I said that I was like, "Hey, how's everyone feeling tonight?" And Ryan yelled back, he's all like shit. And I was like, "Oh, dude, like." My first fucking What's Up is like playing in a band and I get fucking smashed.
Yeah, you don't quite get the same effect too when you're like playing a show in Eric Fisher's living room, you know?
That's right. So you toured a lot off Daylight Breaking or no?
Well, we toured a lot
off Diagram.
Off Diagram. Yeah, forgive me if I get a little jumbled up, but we toured, I think we did another face-to-face tour. We did some like Warped Tour stuff, which is really interesting.
Let's just jump right into that. Like how was that? What year? That would have been... So 2001, you're doing a Warped Tour.
Yeah.
What's the lineup like, Warped Tour 2001?
I think it was like
Ataris and shit?
The bands I recall, I mean, there was always like No Effects. It was not a Bad Religion year, because I remember like Bad Religion was my favorite band for years. And to this day, I still have never seen them play live, which is really weird. But I remember like being disappointed that I was like on an off year for Bad Religion and Warped Tour. So it must have been No Effects headlining. I think Sick of It All was on it that year. Ataris were probably doing it, and there were some. That was like when Warped Tour started kind of dipping their toes in like the mainstream stuff. Mm-hmm. Like I think like Papa Roach was on it. Like they were like one of the big headliners. And Alien Ant Farm and like bands like that.
Yeah.
Rancid. I want to say Rancid was on it. Social D, I think.
So what was the experience like? Because you're coming off like doing van tours, right? Going all over the country, and now you're doing this festival. So like a lot of people they don't know what it's like.
Yeah, it was socially it's kind of stressful. And sort of isolating for like a smaller band, because people really, they kind of hunker down on their buses, and it's very cliquey too. Not like, I mean, just by like default, really. It's not like people are jerks or anything. It's just that like there's these kind of veteran bands that do it, and they've kind of seen it and done it, and they're sort of like, they're not trying to like, you know, rub elbows with the young kids. And so it does have very much like a high schooly kind of cliquey feel to it. You know, like you're kind of back there like with your food tray, like getting your lunch and stuff, and you see like Lars Friedrichsen or whatever his name is, like back there surrounded by a bunch of like people from the tour, and they all got like shit, like, you know, roadie belts and shit fucking hanging off their clothes, and like, I don't know, it's, unless you're like the kind of person, which I don't, maybe Pat was like that, but the rest of the band wasn't, like, it was very much like a unafraid to just kind of like walk up to someone and start chatting him up. You kind of feel a little bit like it feels a little isolating, you know, especially because you kind of get abused a lot in terms of like, when you're a band doing Warped Tour in a van and a trailer instead of being on a bus, like, you're not super looped into like the protocol that is like that caravan that's happening. And so you show up and like you're immediately getting yelled at for like being in the wrong spot, or like, you know, like, and so like logistically, it's a lot. It's like really stressful. It's like you got to be there super early. You might be playing at like 10 a.m. or something. But like the flip side of that is that there's so many people there that are just stoked on whatever, that like you're selling tons of merch and meeting all kinds of people, and they come back and see you the next time you play. So it's almost like a thing you kind of have to do if you want to step it up a little bit. But like the logistics and the kind of like day-to-day of it, it's pretty grueling, really.
Yeah. Was that the only time you ever did something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we did it 2 years in a row, and like just, we didn't do the whole thing either year. We kind of did like a couple weeks of each year. And you know, we did some other tours with weird bills later, but that was the only festival tour that we ever did.
Well, you toured with NWK. That's a weird lineup, right?
Yeah. He's very like super involved in the bands that he takes on tour. Like he personally like kind of picks them out. Like obviously people are presenting him with options, you know, but he sort of like has a really eclectic taste in music, and so that was a strange tour. It was us and Andrew WK and the Locusts, and we played with like Murphy's Law was like on the New York shows. Like the bill was just like super eclectic and like all over the place. And the one thing that is like super true about him is his fans are fucking die hard. Like, you know, you want to talk about juggalos or whatever, like the people that are in it, A-dub, as they call them sometimes, like they are there for one thing and one thing only.
That's interesting, because if he's choosing all the bands and like has such buy-in, and he has these like super fan followers, you would kind of hope that they would like follow his journey, right? Like,
yeah, but he's such a positive guy, like on all fronts. You know, like he somehow turned like, I don't know if you remember the first time you saw like Andrew WK on TV or whatever, but you're like, this is a joke, or this is like a novelty thing or whatever.
I couldn't even tell you a song. I know that like Bloody Nose, like famous photo.
Yeah, like his hit was like this like song called like Party Hard, right?
Okay.
And you obviously, upon like first listen, like you just assume that that's like this joke, like dumb thing, but he somehow like turned it into like this whole like ethos, you know, like what does that mean actually? Like the party's just all about being present in the moment, man, and like making the best out of life, and like, and he's very much like that. Like his shows are super high energy, and like, and he's got this look, you know, like that's like he's wearing those dirty clothes, and he's got the drummer for Obituary playing with him, and like visually they look a certain way, but then like he's like the nicest dude in the world, and every show he's spending like 4 or 5 hours after the show like hanging out with his fans. And he's like putting the work in like for real.
That and rules.
So, yeah, like he has a whole like ethos about how he does this music thing, and I think that's why his fan base is so like diehard. Is like he moves them, and then they tap into that, and they just become all about him. So, but also like the ultra positivity thing, they still get to pick and choose, right? Like he's like super supportive of all the bands that he's choosing to bring on tour with him, but the crowd's kind of like, yeah, cool, dude. Like,
get the MWK.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Is he still active?
I'm sure he's doing something. I don't know how much of it is like musically driven or if he's doing like VJ stuff. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Cool. So the third LP is Daylight Breaking, which is it kind of like, I don't know. I guess you're better at sonically describing things, but it's like a deeper sounding record than Diagram, and it's like I don't know, for the next era of No Motiv, it's almost a little bit, I think, like Scarred, where you're like all over the place, like looking for a sound, and there's some real like treasures in it. But I kind of always felt like the record after it would have been like finally like the No Motiv record.
Absolutely, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, that there was a little bit reactionary to Diagram in the sense that that was the transition with Pat too. Pat had left the band, and we wrote that whole record, Daylight Breaking, just Jeremy and Roger and myself, which was actually kind of nice in the practice space to not hear any bass because like it just sounds really crisp when there were two guitars and drums, and we were like super inspired when we were recording that record because we had been kind of like drifting with Pat for a long time, like musically. I think the three of us were a little more interested in doing some stuff that was a little more complex, and we were definitely kind of like getting away from playing poppy stuff so much and wanting to like, I mean, to us at that time it was kind of an art record. Like the songs were longer, they were a little more like there was a little more like it was, every song was like a little more complex in just the songwriting. It wasn't so much like let's get to the chorus, you know.
Sure.
And that writing process was like probably the most I've ever enjoyed writing music, because the three of us at that time were so just on the same page, you know.
There had to have been a little bit of like wanting to prove you could do it without Pat too, right? Because he's such like a big personality. I mean, he is, I don't know, it's very rare that like the drummer is like the big personality of the band, but for No Motiv, like I think a lot of people would associate the band with Pat.
Yeah, and that's probably rightfully so, you know, because he was the reason No Motiv ever like did anything really, because he had that sort of proactive personality, and he was a guy who like that followed up with everybody and kept in contact with all the bands and all the the industry people, the managers and the booking agents and all the people that we burned over the years, basically. I think we went through like every booking agent in like in that scene. Like if we were to try to book shows now, they would probably all tell us to fuck off because we burned them at some point down the road. But Pat was very much like the reason we ever like did anything, and so I don't think we consciously were trying to prove anything necessarily, but and like sadly it was like he kind of gotten us rolling enough to where like we didn't really need someone to be so proactive on that level. So musically we felt liberated, you know, because he was such a strong personality and he was so influential in the band that like he would go into a practice already knowing like he was excited about his riff or like his song. And when you're trying to work through this stuff, it's like, you know how I don't know, like if you experience this, but like when you're trying to pitch like a riff at a practice, right? You could tell like you can kind of tell when people are responsive to it or not, because they'll be like, oh, what do you want me to do? Like, and you're like, oh, it kind of goes like this, like na 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 na, and then like they'll sort of like half-ass, like and they'll kind of just let it fizzle away. And that was very much like the dynamic that we had with Pat toward the end there, where like he'd kind of be like, yeah, like it's like that. I'm like, okay, cool. Oh, hey, check out this riff I got. It's like, you know, and then it's like this like really basic like pop punk riff, but the way he would sell it, he would just be like, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go like blah 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 blah, you know, like, and he would just be like really animated, and it's like he's very much like he's got like a cult leader charisma about him, to where like he could sell anyone on anything just by being.
It's an infectious personality.
Yeah, like he will just like he will just bring you over to his side like by any means possible. And so I think like, you know, after years of us like feeling like we had sort of a democratic approach to the music, but always feel like you were like compromising like a little too much. Just the timing on that was really like liberating for us. It's just kind of like right, you know, regardless of like what. How people perceive that record, like the feeling of writing that record was just like so freeing and like awesome.
I mean, it definitely had a couple of your best songs on it, period, right?
I think so, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and then you did like a legit video. What was that like?
It was bizarre. There was like you know, we did it in LA somewhere, and there was a full film crew, and like there were paid extras, and there was the catering truck and like the whole thing, and it was a whole day affair. And the label was like definitely, it's funny because we always felt like a Black Sheep band on Vagrant, because they had signed like a lot of those emo bands from that era, like Get Up Kids and Alkaline Trio was doing really well, like Dashboard Confessional. There was all these bands that were just like slaying it in terms of like record sales, you know, and we always kind of felt a little like Black Sheep in that sense. Like we didn't quite belong because we were just like California dudes, you know, and the label though seemed to think that we were the band that had some real like mainstream kind of commercial prospects, you know. I think there were some of the music we were playing, like the song that we did the video for, Into the Darkness, it very much like kind of fell in line with some of that hard rock stuff that was on the radio at that time, like what's the Incubus or whatever, okay. Like, you know, like mainstream bands like that. Like we could almost sort of like cross into that world a little bit at that point with like the way we were starting to write songs. And so yeah, they actually made the investment of like, hey, let's like choose a single and like put some like money behind it, do like a full like radio campaign, and like you know, do the video, get a publicist, and like do all that kind of stuff.
Do you think there was payoff from that?
I don't know, man. Those were some rough years. Like the process of writing that record was really fun, but when we started like touring on it, we felt kind of a little bit like in the wilderness, you know?
Like,
like
you play friends.
Yeah, like there was none of, like we weren't getting like flack from our fans necessarily. We were touring with bands that our fans would never go see. And like I would say like if
what's an example of that?
We toured with this band. Well, I mean, Andrew WK was a great example of that for one.
That's so good.
But another one was like we toured with this band called Finger 11.
Okay. And
they were like a Canadian like hard rock band. Like,
but why would your fans not go? Like, was like the price point high? Like you're playing with a mainstream dance is a $30 ticket, or I don't understand.
Yeah, like they would go see us play a support tour for Green Day or something, you know, sure. Like a band like that. But it's just crossing over into a world that people don't want to touch if you identify at all with like, whether it be pop punk or indie rock or whatever. They're like, I'm not going to go see fucking Finger 11.
Yeah.
You know? Especially because the other bands on the tour were like more in that category. They were like the full like, like that kind of like chin rock stuff, you know, where the guy's sticking his chin out and like singing like the guy from Creed or whatever. It was fucking appalling, dude. Like in the band Finger 11, those guys are actually like really nice guys, and technically they were amazing players, and so it was entertaining to watch them do their thing every night. But like being in that world where you're like, and the crowds is like, we just weren't used to the crowds either. Like that was a fucking group of mouth breathers if I've ever seen one, you know?
What do you mean?
Just like the people that are like really bought into that radio shit.
Yeah.
They're like, they don't identify so deeply with music. Like music is not like their a thing they spend their time on.
Yeah, you know what though? It's a weird dichotomy, right? Because sometimes I feel like those people they like, I don't know, because I'm such a psycho with music, but sometimes I feel like they can actually enjoy music more than me. You know, like where it's so deep and like music is such like an all-encompassing thing in my life and all these different like scenes you get into and so forth. Like they just want to hear a song they like come on the radio and they get fucking stoked. And like I've always been like a little envious of that.
Oh,
Like my favorite song has never come on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
It never will. Like, can you imagine like how fucking great that would feel? Like, here's my favorite song, and I'm just like, you know, you're driving down like an example like you were saying before, like you get that perfect time when you're driving through the desert and the fucking sun's just ducking behind the hills, and then your fucking favorite song comes on the radio. Like, can you imagine that?
Yeah, like this is my song.
Yeah,
like just get all into it.
Yeah, like the closest I could ever think about that was like, I remember one night I was driving home after making flyers at Kinko's, and like some fucking classic rock station played like 2 Maiden songs in a row. You know, I was like, oh shit.
It was like Rock Block Weekend.
Yeah, like I got a second one, you know? It's like, it's not just the Trooper, like, whatever, you know? But I don't know. Part of it is easy to like shit on people that like don't ever go below the surface level. But I mean, I'm envious of it sometimes too, to just something comes on and they're like, yep, I like it.
I like the hook.
I like it. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. You know?
I'll tell you one thing, man. I would give my right arm to be able to hear music with my young ears again. You know?
Yeah.
Like when I hear a song, you know, because I have played music for so long, like it's already dissected. Like I'm already listening for what people are doing. I'm kind of like the kind of I don't know, it's like objective and subjective at the same time. Like I'm able to separate out the sound and like kind of hear it like kind of like broken up like that, like almost like I digitize it in my brain. And it's like when you're a kid, like, and you don't know shit yet, like you are just, it's very visceral, you know. You hear the music and you feel the energy in it, and you're not analyzing it at all, and you're just really experiencing it. And I think that's probably what it's like for most people.
Probably. I mean, also like the problem now is that there's just so much music. Like you have access to everything, right? Where like when you're a kid, you get like a dub of a tape, and it's like, I'm gonna love this. Like even if it's shit, you're going to find something on there that you like, you know? Like, I remember buying, like, 7-inches, you know? It's like, let me take a chance on the 7-inch, and you, like, buy it, and you know you'll fucking like it, but you like a part of a song, and it's still, like, going to make the cut. Like, it's going to get dubbed onto a tape so I can listen to it in my car, because I like one part of one song.
Yeah, and it's, like, really tactile, too, right? Because you're, like, looking at the record sleeve while you're listening to it, and sort of, like, really getting to know kind of like the ins and outs of the whole thing. And
but yeah, I can't imagine getting to like listen to music again, like with 13 or 14-year-old ears.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed a difference just because, you know, I've been out of music like as an identity for at least 10 years right now.
Hey, sorry,
what's that?
Something's up.
What?
With Mike, he's like, I don't know what.
We're back again. So just following up there on Daylight Breaking, you were talking about having Pat leave the band, and Dave Brandon had already left the band, so you had Roger was playing bass, but then when Pat left, Roger being the multi-skilled dude he is, he just simply slid over to drums, and you got a new bass player.
That's right, I actually forgot that Roger had moved over to drums, which he was a drummer originally. Anyway, so that was kind of like the sensible thing to do. That's
another face-to-face tie-in, right? Like I remember Roger telling me one of his earliest music goals was whatever the fastest song on that first Face-to-Face record, like that was his goal, to be able to play that fast.
I think I know the song he's talking about. It's like, it's cool because it's not like
It's not even that fast.
Do that song. It's like a do that.
Yes.
But like it's a really fast version of that song, so I can see why that would be a goal for a drummer. But Roger, the way Roger plays too is Pat is like the most solid drummer in the world, and he keeps it really like straightforward, and Roger is kind of like a little more fluid, and so for that musical progression, it was really cool to have Roger move to drums because it lent itself to that style, whereas Pat's style of playing was really perfect for like what we were doing before. So that was cool. But I did leave a void. So we brought Jeff Hershey on after we kind of finished writing the record. He actually wrote. He played and wrote one or two songs on Daylight Breaking with us as well. And Jeff was he was a fun pick because I had known him since high school as well. He was like a Hessian in high school. He played in a metal band called Black Opal. That's right. And I remember like he was like totally bought in too. Like we'd play like Laser Star, and Black Opal would play, and he'd be wearing like vinyl pants and like just totally all like doing the whole. He was ready for like the big stage, like right out the gate. But he was also like a gear junkie, which is really cool because when he joined the band, the technical part of like all the gear and everything else was like he turned me on to like a lot of he turned me on to like a lot of high end sort of gear stuff, and so
you finally sold your crate.
Yeah, got rid of the crate and like and he's also kind of a chameleon in the sense that he could kind of play, he could emulate like any style that he wants. He's like a natural talent that way. It kind of like emulates any style, and like what he plays in that band Night Demon now, and they just kind of like crank out that style of music without even thinking twice about it. Just comes.
Well, yeah, I mean before that, doing the Heartbeat stuff, right? Like he wanted to start a soul band, and he started a fucking soul band, dude.
Yeah, he just did it.
Yeah, and they're like legit. Like I seen him like. He's up there singing and dancing. Like, I seen him split his pants. Like, he's, like, dancing and shit. They're playing a show. He fucking splits his pants, and the fucking band just goes into, like, this jam session. He has to run across the street. It's, like, in North Park, and you gotta park in this, like, parking complex. He runs to his car, changes his pants, comes back down, and, like, they, in the jam session, just belt right into another fucking song.
Right. And personality-wise, too, he kind of stepped right into Pat's, like, thing, where he... Like, he's the guy that's, like, will bring you over to his side no matter what, too, Like, he's so enthusiastic about everything he does, and he's so bought it. Like, when he was doing the Heartbeat stuff, like, he'd be on stage, like, hey, you, I want to fuck your girlfriend sitting right next to you. Right. He doesn't give a fuck about what he's saying or doing as long as it's, like, getting, like, a reaction out of people. And
in a non-dick way, we should say, right?
No, I mean, unless he's like intentionally trying to be dickish, like for the sake of the role that he's playing, sure. Right? But he's very much like that too, where he makes a decision about, like Jeremy, No Motiv singer, is like the opposite of that, where he's like, you don't know what's going on in his head at any given moment, and Jeff is very much like, this is my goal. This is what I want to like. This is how I want to come across. This is how I want what I want to accomplish. And I'm going to do that like to the T. Yeah,
he's like, I'm going to put one line in Spanish on the Night Demon record so all the kids in Argentina lose their fucking dicks.
Exactly, and he's so knowledgeable about music, and he's a music fan more so than anyone else I know, too. Like, we'll go to every tour that's coming through of any band he's ever liked, period, And he's kind of, like, got a little bit of a, like, he knows how to schmooze, he knows how to, like, get in there with people, and so he was the guy that, like, when he joined the band, we were always the same as we had always been, and kind of like did our own thing. But he would like really like buddy up with the other bands and just he's very charismatic. So him joining the band was really cool. I feel sort of bad that we were sort of tapering off at that point. Like we were kind of like, not really sure like what we were trying to do anymore, and like. We were just getting a little burnt out at that point.
Yeah, but it gave him like enough of a confidence, and like you guys kind of gave him the rub of legitimacy that he was able to like go on and do other things. Like I don't know if he didn't do that run in No Motiv, like would he have had the ego and the balls to like do like the heartbeats?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I think No Motiv for him actually brought him out of the stereotype that people had kind of like cornered him into. You know, like everyone kind of, well, he worked at the Ventura Theater for years, and like out like when he stopped like being a musician locally for a long time, he kind of was like not doing stuff that would like lend him to be a musician like professionally. And then him like joining the band and touring with us for a couple of years, it just like kind of opened him up to like a lot of different possibilities, and he took advantage of that, you know. And he's definitely he's doing that on a level that none of us are anymore, and it's kind of cool to see him doing that stuff. But
yeah, he's slaying it. Night Demon,
yeah. So yeah, he was a crucial addition. Like he kind of injected some energy into the band that like we needed at that time.
So not to jump from that to the inevitable end, but you guys, how long did you go off that record, and when did you guys kind of decide to? You didn't do like a real breakup, but when did you decide to do a hiatus?
I think we were doing the last tour we did was kind of a short headlining run.
Was that the one where you borrowed the Ingatro van?
Yeah. When we upholstered it for you guys with like flannel sheets.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I felt weird about renting the van to you guys, but I really wanted an iPod, and it was like it was like the first or the second version of the iPod, and I remember going over and you guys bought it for me, and you guys had already left for tour. I think Roger's parents had to give it something. I went and got it from Roger's parents. I was like so excited, like the future is here, dude. Like, and really, like that's all I needed, like. That was like the culmination of where I wanted technology to go. Mm-hmm. Like when it moved past the iPod, like I don't really like the Spotify and having all the stuff on my phone. Like I still kind of liked curating my like playlist and like being able to have like this giant library of music and not have to like, I don't know, just on the phone it's all mixed up with all the other bullshit. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, it was kind of like right before things sort of spun out of control, like technologically, right?
Yeah, but I remember that was a control van. We did our 4 U.S. tours in it, and that van was just fucked up. Like, there's all these random holes in it, you know, like, if it rains, it's gonna leak, you know?
Yeah, well, you don't even realize it's gonna leak until you, like, make, like, a left turn. And then all the water that's been gathering out of the van all goes towards that one hole, and whoever's, like, sleeping back there just gets a fucking bucket of water dumped on their head.
Yeah, or like, if you're driving, like, there's that hole by, like, your left leg, and, like, we couldn't even, like, find that hole. Like, we stuffed it with, like, a million shirts and shit, but it was still cold, and it was, like, a legit hole because, like, if you go through a big puddle, like, your leg would get wet.
Didn't somebody, like, take a piss right there one time? Like, while they were driving or something?
No. So the van, like, none of us knew shit about cars, and we're buying a van to, like, drive around the country when we're 21. So, like, my idea was, let's just buy a family van that has the lowest mileage possible because, like, the family probably took care of it. And we bought, it was like a Dodge Ram, I don't know, it was some sort of Dodge van, and it was, like, immaculate. Like, it had, like, this little, like a little station for your drinks that would, like, they were on, like, this metal pole that goes into a hole, like, in the back, so you can be sitting on the bench seat and, like, be drinking your drink, you know? Anyway, when you pull out that little table, like, there's a hole that just goes down to, like, the street. So that was the piss hole. So, like, you know, you're on tour and you just got to take a piss, like, you just pee down the piss hole.
It's very convenient.
No,
it's better than having a bunch of, like, Gatorade bottles full of piss rolling around in the van while you're driving. So.
No, for sure. But if you don't block off the wind, it just blows right up. So
yeah.
It was an expert thing you had to get good at.
Yeah, well, it worked great for that.
Yeah, but I just remember, like, the arrogance of you guys being like, "Oh no, dude, we'll fix the holes. Like, we'll be able to patch it up. Like, we'll give this thing some love." And then was that the time that you were saying, like, the first night of the tour, like, Jeremy bought a brand new leather jacket?
Yeah, he had a bit of a habit of doing stuff like that, where he'd be like, "Hey, can I borrow some band money?" And then we'd be like, "All right," and then he'd show up with like a vintage leather jacket from the 70s.
Right.
But at that point too, we knew we weren't gonna like come home with like real money, and like we still had to like work jobs when we came home always, and so tour just kind of became a bit of a free for all, you know. It was like,
right, but he bought a leather jacket the first night of the tour, and then he just left it on the seat, and then it rained, and like it got flooded, and his jacket got ruined the first night.
I don't know, man. I was grateful for it though because that van worked out great, and it was cozy, and it had some like In Control vibes on it, so it was fun.
No, I was so glad you guys could do that, and we were able to be a little part of No Motiv history.
Yeah, I do recall Roger actually legitimately saying like, I don't want to do this anymore, but it still was more of a hiatus. We kind of just fizzled, played a few. We put out another record, you know. We put out Winter Long. It was an EP.
But like after Daylight Breaking is 2004 and Winter Long is 2011.
Well, yeah, no, it was it went dark for quite a while actually, and then when we did Winter Long, like we were pretty much on the other life stuff already at that point. I was moving around. I think I might have already lived in New York at that point or something.
That's a long time. I mean, you would have been 29 or 30 at that point. Yeah,
so I mean, the band really, like, it never really, like, legitimately broke up, but it's done.
We'll see. We'll see, right? Well, I mean, do you have a favorite memory of the band? Other than that, well, you were talking about the one show, right? When Face to Face canceled, Animal Face show.
Yeah, I don't, you know, nothing specific. I really just, kind of like I mentioned earlier, my favorite times playing music have always been like the process of recording records, and I think that kind of stays true to like every record we ever did. It was just, that's the part of playing music that I personally enjoy the most. It's probably because I grew up like going to the studios with my dad, and so it kind of feels like it's like in there, like embedded, like deep, you know. Just like I get comforted just by being in a room that has no windows and a bunch of gear in it, you know. So that whole part of that lifestyle is what really like lit me up for like that 10 years that we were like doing the band like really actively. And it's the thing I miss the most about doing music seriously, is like looking forward to like making that whole thing like become something more than just like an idea in your head. The touring stuff is really fun, but really it didn't inspire me as much as like actually creating music does.
Cool. Anything else you want to touch on? You feel like you've been well represented?
Yeah, man, I feel good about it. I feel real good. It was actually really nice to revisit all that stuff after all these years. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you.